We are looking at the biggest government pay raise in the last 20 years. What's the reason for this? Largely, it's the rising private sector wages, pay gaps, and inflation. Let's get into it. The Federal Wage Council issued a new report that shows federal employee salaries have lagged over 22% behind the private sector. This seems large, but it's not as high as the 23% from last year. And you can't just take two sectors and look at the average salary, because if you did a quick Google search right now, you would see that the national average salary is $53,000 a year, and the average federal government salary is at $94,000 a year. But if you look at some professions like doctors, engineers, lawyers, the more highly educated type of individuals, you will see that is where the disparity lies. And it becomes a struggle in order to attract and retain these highly qualified professionals if you do not have the means to offer them compensation. Another study shows the more education a federal employee has, the larger the gap will be compared to the private sector. And it's not just the pay gap, but inflation as well. And we all know that inflation has been increasing a lot over the last 12 months. Whether that's gas, the food at the grocery store, or even a used car. The inflation for the last 12 months has been over 8%. So even if we were to get an 8% raise next year, it wouldn't be enough. The rents are still increasing. The mortgages are still increasing. We would still be losing money when it comes to the buying power of our dollar. And there's no way we are actually getting an 8% raise. So what is there to be done about it? Well, the report made 6 recommendations that would ultimately increase the pay for tens of thousands of federal employees. This report came out after the president proposed a 4.6% increase for federal employees and military members. And you can clearly tell that this report is signaling that 4.6% is not going to be enough. I will leave a link to the full report down below if you want to read it. So how much would this pay raise increase salaries? Let's first take a look at a GS-12 working in the federal government, which is one of the most common grades. So a GS-12, Step 5, in the federal government earns $89,000 a year. With this proposed pay raise, this salary would increase to $94,000 a year, which ends up being about $4,000 more a year. And on the higher end, a GS-15 Step 10 would go from $170,000 a year to $177,000, which would be an increase of about $7,800 a year. But this pay could be even more. This is because a member of the council, along with a senator, have argued for a 5.1% increase. And this is largely due to the size of the pay gap. This 5.1% increase would see that same GS-12 earning an extra $450 a year. And the same GS-15 would then earn an extra $850 a year. Another thing to keep in mind is a lot of these higher cost areas, they will be seeing more of an increase. So if you compare somebody who lives in San Francisco to somebody who lives in North Dakota, the person living in San Francisco is going to see a little bit more money in their pocket. Now, this is far from enough to combat the rising rates of inflation, and many of us, including myself, are going to have to scale back our lifestyle as we approach into 2023. Also, this pay raise is not yet official. According to pay law, if Congress does not enact a figure by the end of the year, then the 4.6% recommendation the president made will then take effect. When it comes to inflation, a lot of times the private sector companies, they have it worse than the federal government agencies, because in the private sector, you have to turn a profit. And if people are not spending the same because their dollar is losing buying power, that means less revenue for the private companies. And when these companies have less revenue, they lay off employees because they have to cut the cost. So what this results in is large layoffs. And in the government, we do not really have that same type of issue. Now, if you're watching this and you're in the process of applying to a federal government job, then there are ways that you could be disqualifying yourself. And if you want to know what those ways are, I want you to watch this video next. If you would like to see more videos like this, please click like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.